When it comes to moral reasoning or thinking about what is right versus what is wrong, we have some interesting ties to our cognitive developmental stages. Recall that Jean Piaget suggested that we have four major stages that we all go through as we develop our ability to think about the world around us. So, our sensor-motor phase, where we are heavily reliant on sensory experiences and motor skills. Our pre-operational phase, where we are heavily reliant on intuition and egocentric thinking. Our concrete operational phase, where we are able to engage in some limited logical reasoning, as well as appreciate the idea of conservation. And finally, our formal operational stage, where if we get this far, we are able to engage in more abstract reasoning. These skills will tie in well when we start thinking about Kohlberg's stages of moral reasoning. The first stage that Kohlberg outlined was called the pre-conventional stage. When I am engaging in pre-conventional moral reasoning, I am thinking about right versus wrong in relation to how it affects me. This sounds a lot like egocentric thinking, which, remember, was characteristic of pre-operational cognitive development. So during this pre-conventional phase, if I am engaged in egocentric thinking, considering how my actions impact me, what is right gets me rewarded. What is wrong gets me punished. This means that I may be interested or inclined to break rules or disobey if I know I can get away with it and in fact benefit by breaking the rules. So for instance, let's consider academic dishonesty. If I believe that I can cheat on the exam and not get in trouble for it, that could help me do better on the exam. So that must be a good behavior, right? That would be the determination of our pre-conventional thinker. If our pre-conventional thinker instead decided, well, I'm not going to cheat because I'm afraid I'm going to get caught, that's still pre-conventional moral reasoning. Their choices, their decision about what is a good behavior versus a bad behavior was all about what gets them rewarded versus what gets them punished. From our pre-conventional phase, we may eventually move into conventional moral reasoning. Conventional moral reasoning speaks to the process of us learning social rules and norms. We start to realize we should listen to authority because they know the social rules and norms. Conventional moral reasoners tend to think in very black and white terms. They at least, though, appreciate that their behaviors have consequences for other people. This actually starts to sound relatively similar to our concrete operational thinkers. Our concrete operational thinkers have started moving away from egocentric thinking, a little bit at least. They start to gain an appreciation for the fact that there are other people who might have different perspectives. That is them developing and activating that theory of mind. But our concrete operational thinkers are still, after all, pretty concrete. They're thinking in terms of black versus white, right versus wrong, superheroes versus evil doers. So they have very concrete lines drawn between good and bad. Our conventional moral reasoners will tend to rely heavily on just following social rules. So let's go back to our case of academic dishonesty. A conventional moral reasoner thinks about cheating on the test and decides, no, I'm not going to do that because the rules say we don't cheat. They don't necessarily come up with much support or understanding of why we're not supposed to cheat, but they choose not to because, after all, those are the rules and we follow the rules. That is our conventional moral reasoner. Our post-conventional moral reasoner starts to move beyond just relying on social rules and norms and starts to develop their own moral ethos. In a sense, they have a little conscience, a little shoulder angel that helps them understand why will they not engage in hurtful behaviors, rather than just relying on the rules and authority to tell them how to act. Our post-conventional moral reasoners can appreciate that the world is not black and white. It is not good versus bad, right versus wrong. It is not superheroes versus evildoers. The post-conventional moral reasoner appreciates abstract reasoning, which, recall, was a skill demonstrated by our formal operational thinkers. Now, a post-conventional reasoner might be inclined to break rules, but they will break rules not because of any personal gain, but rather because they feel the rule is unfair or unjust. So, for instance, if I am someone who normally would follow the speed limit because I feel it's important to be safe on the roads, but I have a pregnant woman in my back seat who's about to give birth, I might be inclined to break those rules in that moment. Not because there's really any personal gain for me, but because I can appreciate someone else's life is potentially in danger if I don't hurry up and get them to the hospital. So I may break rules in a sense to help others or to improve society. If we think about individuals who engage in civil disobedience, a lot of times we can understand their behaviors in terms of post-conventional moral reasoning. They may be protesting or even breaking laws or social norms, but they are not doing it for personal gain. That's something our pre-conventional moral reasoners do. Instead, our post-conventional moral reasoners are breaking rules because they feel the rules are unfair or unjust, and they want to demonstrate that lack of equity in the rules.